Minister Maclay, Mayor Brown, leaders of the business community, members of Parliament, ladies and gentlemen. Kia ora, 大家早上好. It is a privilege and pleasure to join you again at the China Business Summit. Let me acknowledge the Prime Minister who spoke earlier this morning. But above all, I want to thank Fran for your kind invitation and the hard work of you and team that makes all this happen. I value this annual opportunity to discuss the shifts taking place in both China and the broader world and the evolving China-New Zealand relationship. Indeed, these are times of profound, fundamental, and sometimes dramatic transformations, both globally and within China, which will have in-depth and far-reaching implications for the relationship and cooperation between our two countries. Looking around, we're witnessing three major global dynamics driving such transformations. First, rapid advances in technology have led to an unprecedented surge in productivity, dramatically reconfiguring ways of life and production and how societies organize themselves. Fast-paced innovation is constantly expanding the boundaries of human knowledge. In those industries of the future, namely artificial intelligence, quantum science, new energy, biotech, digital and smart manufacturing, and green technologies, disruptive, revolutionary breakthroughs are catalyzing chain reactions that reshape the global economy and scientific paradigms. As a result, new products, industries, and business patterns are emerging at an exponential speed, carrying seismic implications for humanity. Second, tectonic shifts are on the move in the international political and economic landscape, with particularly the collective rise of the Global South. Emerging markets and developing countries have now become active major players in the world economy, having growing agency in global governance and growing multipolarization. Increasingly, many big seminal developments are taking place in parts of the world other than the traditional centers of change. Gone is the era when the world was dominated by one or a small number of countries which used to monopolize international rulemaking and unfairly reaped disproportionate, if not exclusive, benefits of development. Third, a deficit in global governance has posed challenges and even threats to international architecture. Arguably, the overall trends since the end of World War II, particularly the end of the Cold War, towards openness, integration, and cooperation has largely kept the peace and brought about increasing prosperity in the world. Such trends now threaten to reverse themselves, however, as our world is confronted with rising unilateralism, protectionism, and hegemonic and bullying behaviors, undermining the international law-based international order and the multilateral system centered around the United Nations. While the shifts we are observing in the world today have given rise to much uncertainty, what remains certain is that the underlying trends of economic globalization remains unchanged, and the momentum towards a multipolar world remains unstoppable. These twin features help to define the future of our world, a world of increasing interconnectedness and plurality, and a world for better or for worse, with a shared future. This process is taking place at several levels. In the economic domain, it is first and foremost manifested in the source of growth being increasingly diversified globally. With increasingly complex and interconnected global supply chains, expanding markets, accelerating technological diffusion, and optimized resource allocation, the primary engines of growth are shifting gear from advanced economies increasingly towards emerging and developing ones, at the same time as they spread from traditional sectors towards dynamic new industries. The evidence is compelling. Since 2000, trade in goods originating from developing economies has expanded 4.6 times, significantly outpacing that from advanced economies. Accordingly, their share of global trade has risen substantially from 30 to 45%, consolidating their role as the principal drivers of global trade increase. Over the past 2 decades, the developing countries have contributed a remarkable 80% of world economic growth. In the past year, they provided over half the impetus for global recovery, with the contribution from China alone standing around 30%. Sector-wise, while global trade in goods grew by a modest 2% in 2024, trade in services surged by 8.8%, accounting for 60% of the total increase in global trade. Notably, global exports of digital services doubled by last year compared with just a decade ago. On the other hand, innovation, a key driving force of growth, is no longer an exclusive monopoly of certain countries. For quite some time, the US, represented by the Silicon Valley, held a dominant position in technological advances. However, in recent years, the emerging economies have started to move to the forefront to become critical pillars for innovation. For instance, China, the world's biggest manufacturing hub, has established a world-class scientific ecosystem within decades, a remarkably short period, making itself a leader in various cutting-edge fields. According to the Nature Index 2025, China ranks first in high-quality research outputs, with 8 out of the 10 top-performing institutions from China. The Chinese Academy of Sciences has maintained its top position for 13 consecutive years. Furthermore, among all the top 500 global research institutions in the list, those from China account for nearly 30%. When it comes to the frontier areas such as 5G and going on to 6G now, satellite technology, quantum communications and computing, new energy solutions and AI, China contributes a substantial amount, almost half of the technological innovation and application. This comes on top of major original breakthroughs in biological, physical, and space sciences. Correspondingly, China is also the first country that owns more than 4 million valid domestic invention patents, with high-value patents constituting over 40%. For 4 consecutive years now, China has led the world in international patent applications submitted under the Patent Cooperation Treaty. Globally, 60% of computing technology patents, 40% of AI patents, and 33% of semiconductor patents are from China. Ladies and gentlemen, while China is both an integral part and key driving force in global transformations, it is simultaneously navigating its own rapid and profound changes domestically. For all the changes and uncertainties, China's central priority remains unchanged. Just as the Chinese saying goes, 任凭风浪起，稳坐钓鱼台. No matter how turbulent the global landscape is or will be, China remains unremittingly committed to development to deliver better lives for the Chinese people in the historic process of the great rejuvenation of the Chinese nation along the Chinese path to modernization. This is a firm, unshakable national consensus which has not changed and will not change. By taking both cyclical measures and tackling longer-term structural issues, China has managed to prevail over the significant external and domestic headwinds to continue to lead the major economies on growth. Its GDP grew by 5.3% year-on-year, according to the latest announcement, for the first half of 2025, demonstrating the robust resilience, endogenous driving force, and development potential in China's economy. As a supersized market, China is vigorously expanding domestic demand, with significant potential still to be unleashed in consumption growth. With its economy rebalancing and upgrading in parallel, China will continue to serve as an anchor of stability for the global economy, bringing long-term opportunities to the rest of the world, including New Zealand. Deeper down, China is going through multiple major foundational transformations at the same time. First, the comprehensive development and application of new quality productive forces is fueling the optimization and upgrading of China's economy. The most remarkable of which, as has been mentioned by many speakers before me, is digitization. In this regard, the oft-evoked case in point is the DeepSeek moment, which wowed the world as it seemingly jumped out of nowhere. Actually, though, DeepSeek is but one outgrowth of the rapidly evolving and maturing innovation ecosystem in China. There are many other such world-leading innovative names incubated in Hangzhou and many other cities. Names like Unitree Robotics, developing robotics dogs and humanoid robots; Game Science, which launched Blacksmith Wukong last year, the first domestically produced 3A game masterpiece in China; Rocket, a leader in AI eyeglasses; BrainCo, working on brain-machine interface; Deep Robotics, also on robotics dogs and humanoid robots; and Manicore, a space intelligence enterprise with the world's largest interactive 3D data capability. Behind these entities lies years of investment from both the public and private sectors in human resources, scientific and technological capabilities, and the comprehensive but deeply integrated and constantly upgrading industries, which collectively generate, with gaining momentum, disruptive innovations in emerging industries at the cutting edge of global digitization and overall human progress. At the same time China digitizes, the country is undergoing a profound, extensive, and rapid green transformation as well. Through pursuing green development while proactively expanding its new energy industries, the green premium to China's economic and social progress has been continuously elevated. Particularly, China's power generating sector is accelerating its green transition. China has maintained its position as the global leader in wind power installation for 14 consecutive years, and solar for 9 straight years. Clean energy sources now dominate new power generation capacity, constituting nearly 80% of new additions. The scale of green power trading is growing rapidly. In 2024, market-based trading of new energy power exceeded 1 trillion kilowatt-hours, accounting for over half of its total. The trading volume of green electricity reached 234 billion kilowatt-hours, marking a year-on-year increase of 237%. China's green development not only advances domestically, but also contributes to accelerating lower carbon transitions worldwide. Each year, its wind and solar power products helped other countries reduce their carbon dioxide emissions by hundreds of millions of tons, playing an important role in the global efforts to combat climate change. Apart from solar, the two other parts of the now well-known new trio from China, namely electric vehicles and batteries, are also powering the global green transformation, including here in the country. You may be aware that BYD Shark, its flashy-looking ute, has been named the car of the year here in New Zealand. Increasingly, you could see a sizable presence of Chinese-made EVs of different brands on New Zealand roads, something inconceivable even 5 years ago. On batteries, China now supplies 70% of the materials and 60% of all finished products in the world, forming the world's largest charging network. Lately, you may have heard, the CATL's second-generation LFP batteries with unprecedented charging speed and range, 5 minutes for over 500 kilometers, have made a eye-catching debut. It's yet another vivid snapshot of China's unyielding efforts in driving the global green and low-carbon transformation. Underpinning these and other transformations in China, the modernization of China's governance system and capacity continues to make new strides, at the center of which is the leadership of the Communist Party of China. This year marks the 104th anniversary of the establishment of the party. Growing from less than 60 members in 1921 to more than 100 million today, the Communist Party of China has already become definitively the largest and arguably the most successful political organization in human history, having changed China and, for that matter, the world. Since the very day of its founding, the party has made seeking happiness for the Chinese people and rejuvenation of the Chinese nation its mission, by unremittingly promoting self-revolution and learning from its successes and failures. The party has been constantly improving itself and its governance of the country. We in China believe that how it works in practice is the sole meaningful litmus test for any theory or conceptual construct. Likewise, the key to testing a social governance system lies in its ability to deliver. Through opening up and reform, the CPC has blazed one of the most successful development paths ever, bringing sea changes to the country within a few mere generations, having lifted hundreds of millions of people out of poverty and built the country into one of the biggest and most prosperous and innovative economies. Lying at the heart of the Chinese path to modernization is responsiveness to people's aspirations for a progressively better life and the adoption of a system and policies that suits China's specific national conditions. With what specific policies work in China may or may not work in other countries. If there is any inspiration that other countries can draw from China's development trajectory, it is, I think, to listen to your own people and follow your own path based on your own national conditions. No less important is the fact that China's development has not been achieved at the expense of others. It has occurred both as a result of and as a contribution to increased global prosperity, creating opportunities in that process for common development around the world, expanding the frontiers of human progress, and offering China solutions to the global challenges such as climate change. In this sense, for any nation, decoupling from China is giving up on 1/3 of global growth opportunities, on nearly half of the world's innovations, and on access to critical resources and capabilities needed for addressing common challenges. Ladies and gentlemen, these and other transformations in China and the world constitute the backdrop for our bilateral relationship and for the recent visit by China by Prime Minister Luxon, which is a valued opportunity for both countries to take our mutually beneficial relationship forward. Thanks to efforts from both sides, the visit turned out to be a huge success with fruitful outcomes. The leaders of the two countries consolidated political consensus. During the visit, President Xi Jinping, Premier Li Qiang, and Chairman of the Standing Committee of the National People's Congress, Zhao Leji, respectively met and held talks with the Prime Minister. The leaders of the two countries compared notes on China-New Zealand relations, as well as regional and international issues of common interest, and they issued, on that basis, a joint statement. In both the meetings and the statement, the leaders reaffirmed their shared commitment to the relationship, reached broad consensus on its future direction, and deepened mutual understanding that sustains the positive momentum for its further development. During the visit, the two sides expanded practical cooperation. In the joint statement, the two leaders welcomed progress on cooperation in areas of shared interest and jointly witnessed the signing of multiple cooperation documents covering customs, food safety, organic product certification, climate change, and cultural heritage. The New Zealand side announced new travel facilitation measures for Chinese citizens. This will help to unlock new space for business-to-business and people-to-people engagements between the two countries. Also during the visit, business cooperation delivered considerable tangible outcomes. As has been mentioned repeatedly now this morning, while the PM's delegation was in Shanghai, 871 million New Zealand dollars worth of commercial agreements were signed between businesses of the two countries. During the leg in Beijing, the amount grew over the 1 billion mark. Business collaboration has consistently functioned as a built-in driving force for bilateral cooperation. Conversely, it also thrives, has been pointed out by one of the speakers, it also thrives on a strong and positive overall bilateral relationship. As far as China is concerned, we value our ties with New Zealand, a consistent position that remains unchanged. Just as President Xi pointed out, since the establishment of diplomatic ties more than 50 years ago, our relationship has experienced ups and downs, but withstood the test of changes in the international landscape. It has mostly been at the forefront of China's relations with Western developed countries, bringing tangible benefits to the people of both nations. One clear lesson from the 50-plus years is that mutual respect, especially for each other's sovereignty, independence, and internal affairs, and territorial integrity, is foundational to a mutually beneficial partnership. That is where we've come from, and going forward, this lesson would continue to inform our common efforts to build on this mutually important relationship. We should bear in mind that there is no conflict of fundamental interest between China and New Zealand, and our common interests far exceed our differences, which through common efforts must not be allowed to be blown out of proportion or get in the way of our cooperation. As the China-New Zealand Comprehensive Strategic Partnership enters its second decade, the Chinese side stands ready to work closely with New Zealand side to give effect to the consensus reached by the leaders and to take the relationship to the next level. To better benefit our two peoples and to inject more stability and certainty into this turbulent world. Looking ahead, we can jointly take concrete steps in the following areas. First, leverage the complementarity between our economies by taking full advantage of our bilateral FTA to grow our trade further in the traditional sectors, but also by advancing and concluding as soon as possible negotiations on the negative list for trade in services, so as to continuously promote the liberalization and facilitation of our two-way trade and investment, and upgrade our cooperation for higher-level win-win outcomes. In this respect, we also look forward to continued and stronger support from New Zealand for China's accession to both CPTPP and TIPA. Second, explore the potential for breaking new ground. China is willing to enhance the alignment of our development strategies to explore more collaborative opportunities, including in areas vital to the future development of New Zealand, such as innovation, climate change response, and infrastructure development. Specifically, we can scale up cooperation in emerging fields such as new energy vehicles, industrial decarbonization, AI applications, and broader digital solutions. I understand this is also a key focus of this year's summit, and I look forward to discussions on these transformative opportunities later in the program. Third, further deepen the enduring people-to-people bonds. Over the past year, China's visa waiver for New Zealand citizens has significantly facilitated their visits to China. Recently, New Zealand announced amended visa settings and operational changes to make visa applications from China easier. From this November, Chinese citizens can travel to New Zealand visa-free from Australia and enjoy visa-free transit through New Zealand airports. The Chinese side welcomes these measures. Education, culture, youth, and subnational exchanges form the bedrock and a sustainable engine of our bilateral ties. We need to work in concert to nurture these connections broadly and deeply. And finally, work together to support multilateralism. Both China and New Zealand are beneficiaries from multilateralism, and the future of both countries and the entire world at that will depend on the continued functioning of the multilateral system based on international law and centered around the United Nations. China believes that history should move forward, not backwards, and the world must not regress to the law of the jungle. We share a common future as humankind, and we must work together to make sure that future will be a brighter rather than a darker one. This is particularly pertinent as we mark this year the 80th anniversary of the victory in the World Anti-Fascist War and of the founding of the United Nations. We must not allow the lapse of time to dilute the memories of the scourge of war that befell the world. And as we reflect on the lessons of history, we should renew the commitments to solidarity and cooperation for world peace and shared prosperity, and reject divisiveness and confrontation. In this respect, as China and New Zealand, we are both stakeholders, and we both have agency. The stake is simply too high for us not to play our roles. With these, I wish to conclude my remarks this morning and wish the summit a full success. And may China and New Zealand, our region and our world, continue to enjoy peace and ever greater prosperity. Thank you. 谢谢大家。